Hi, Vicky Midwood here. So I was going to do a live yesterday on my page about hormones and gut and craving, and the lighting was awful, and so I have changed room and come down to my little downstairs office to do it. And what I also did was looked back at what I said on the live, and I just think it was maybe a little bit too much information for you in one go. So what I'm going to do is split this into kind of three parts. So I'm going to look at the craving part of it first. The most important thing to know is that it's to do with physiological stuff that's going on and neurotransmitters both in your brain, but not just in your brain, in your gut as well. But I'm going to talk about the brain stuff first so that you don't get confused. So the main driver for you craving food is stress. And I know stress is an overused thing. It's a term that we hear all the time, and we don't really perhaps take on board just how it affects us in so many different ways. But basically, when we are stressed, there are too many of those stress hormones roaming around in your system, and the stress hormones that we are focusing on are adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol. There are others. Okay, but those are the main ones. Now, what happens is when your body is in that heightened state of stress, which we're so used to, we don't even feel it necessarily, then it says, hey, I need to get rid of some of these stress hormones, and I need to calm down, and I need to feel good, and I need to relax. And the brain knows that serotonin, or a boost in serotonin, is going to create that calm and sort of happy, contented feeling. So we look to food to provide us with that. And the problem that we've got in today's world is that the foods that are readily available that provide that serotonin hit are the ones that are high in sugar and the ones that are high in carbohydrate. So I'm thinking along the lines of things like pasta, cake, rice, pancakes, waffles, muffins, ice cream, pizza, pastries, savoury pasties, all of those things that create a nice feeling in the mouth when you're eating them, but they also unfortunately break down very quickly into sugars, which cause a surge in insulin. And when we have that surge in insulin, we also get a surge in serotonin. And so the brain knows this and the body knows this. And so when we get that nice surge of serotonin, we feel calmer and we kind of go, fantastic. So the brain knows that this works. The body knows that this works. So it kind of makes sense that you're going to want to keep going back for those foods. Now, the reason why some of us feel that we can't control the cravings and we can't just go, well, I've had that and now I feel calm and I'm relaxed, all is good with the world, is because what tends to happen is because those foods create such a surge in sugar within the blood, the body then sort of says, gosh, this is like overloading my system. So it brings in quite a lot of insulin. And it doesn't always get the balance right, which means that sometimes we can then drop quite quickly. And so suddenly we may feel within the space of an hour, depending on how much you've eaten and how much of a blood sugar surge there was, we can then sort of crash and feel irritable again and a little bit crotchety, a little bit narky, a little bit bad-tempered. Somebody just has to say the wrong thing and we're kind of like agitated. And guess what? That then creates more internal stress, which means then that we get the cycle of the stress hormones coming back in. Then the body says, hang on a minute, stress hormones are too high. We need some more serotonin to help us to calm down and feel better. So what do? You go looking for the next fix. And so, although we tend to blame our willpower for us craving certain foods and us not being able to keep away from the chocolate or the biscuit tin or whatever it is that is the food that you tend to go for, it's not willpower. It's a lot to do with your neurotransmitters, that serotonin that your body wants elevated so it can feel calmer and help to quash some of the stress hormones. But also, the thing is, it does actually work, and so the brain remembers this. So it kind of makes sense that it's going to tell you to go back and do that again. So if you're trying to fight it with willpower, you're fighting something really pretty powerful. So that's kind of one part of why we crave and why we find it so difficult then to stop ourselves from going back for more on a regular basis. The other side to that then is that we're also getting a hit of dopamine. Now, you've probably heard of serotonin and dopamine that kind of work together, and they do. They're kind of two sides of the similar thing. So you've got serotonin that helps you to sort of calm down and feel in control and feel kind of on an even keel and happy and relaxed. But then you've got the dopamine hit, and the dopamine hit is your reward system that kicks off in your brain. Now, that is something that makes you feel energized. So it's a little bit like for those people who have issues with drugs and sugar, for some of us, and I'm one of them, sugar has the same effect on our reward system. Now, it does have an effect for the majority of people, but there are certain people, for whatever reason, we tend to be much more sensitive to it, and that effect tends to be, if you like, over exaggerated. So when it hits our reward system, we light up like a Christmas tree and we go, yes, this feels awesome. I feel invincible. I feel energized. I can take on the world. Suddenly we get this surge of energy and we just feel fantastic. And the brain remembers that, the physiology also remembers that. And so we've got those two things happening together, because usually when serotonin increases, dopamine increases, and usually when serotonin drops, dopamine also drops. The foods that we go for are those sugary foods, or those refined carbohydrate foods, because they work and they elevate our blood sugar levels. Elevated blood sugar levels equals a surge of insulin. A surge of insulin means that serotonin is going to rise. So that is why we are craving those foods over and over again. And the issue is that the more stress that we have, the more the body and the brain are going to say, can we calm down, please? Can we get shut of some of these stress hormones? And they're going to push you towards those high sugar, high carbohydrate, comforting foods, because they work. They work on those neurotransmitters. And the more you try and resist, and this is where it gets into a vicious cycle, the more you try and resist, the more internal stress you are creating, because then you've got this kind of internal fight in your head going, I should stop eating this. I'm going to stop eating sugar. I'm going to stop eating carbohydrates. I'm going to stop eating X, Y, and Z. But as soon as you get that stress hormone elevation and your brain pushes you towards those, you're going to get that internal conflict where you're having a tug of war, which in itself creates more stress. And so you can see why trying to resist actually makes things even harder. So I'm going to explain to you, not in the next video, but the one after, how we can combat that. So that is one element of why we crave foods, and it's the neurotransmitters that kick in because of the raise in stress hormones, which then increase insulin, and all of these are hormones, which then releases the serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter, which tells you to go for those foods that make you feel good. And they work, folks. So that's why you crave more of them. Now, in the next video, I'm going to talk to you about how your female cycle and your own estrogen affects that as well, because when we get elevated levels of estrogen, that actually helps us to feel calmer and more in control. So we need less of the serotonin hit. But As you know, with your female cycle, your estrogen levels kind of do this. And if you are in menopause and you're not having a regular cycle, then your estrogen levels are pretty much lower a lot of the time anyway, which is why oftentimes we suddenly find that when we get to menopause, perimenopause, that we are being steered even more strongly towards those high sugar, high carbohydrate foods. So I'll talk about your female cycle on the next one, and I'll also talk about how that all relates to what is going in your gut, because your gut microbiome, the actual bacteria in your gut, also has a say in the foods that you are going to go for when your body's under stress and when it wants to calm things down. And the more we go for those same high sugar, highly refined carbohydrate foods, the more we're going to increase the gut bacteria that likes to be fed those foods, and therefore the more powerful the signal's going to be, not just from your brain for you to get in more of the serotonin, please, but also from your gut to get in more of those high sugary foods to keep those bacteria happy. So I'm hoping that you're now starting to see that there is a connection that you can't kind of cut off at the head or cut off at the gut. You can't ignore and focus on one or the other. We have to focus on both. And then we've got an emotional element that comes in too. But that's it for this one. Any questions, please do ask them. Let me know if this was helpful in any way. And if you want to get in touch with me or message me, then please do book in for a chat on the link or send me a personal message. I love to talk about gut, hormones, and what's going on with you. So until the next one, have a good one.